Okay, if you celebrate Halloween, you've probably carved a pumpkin before. But do you know the legend behind the iconic Halloween iconography? My name is Gar, and I'm going to tell you about the spooky tale of the jack-o'-lantern. Spooky, 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 spook. So the story comes from an Irish folktale, and it's about a man named Stingy Jack. So apparently, Jack invited the devil to have a drink with him, and saying on brand, he did not want to pay for their drinks. So he convinced the devil to turn into a coin, but instead of paying for the drinks, he took the now coin-shaped devil and put him in his pocket next to a silver cross, which stopped him from turning back into his original form. He only agreed to release the devil on two conditions. One, the devil had to leave him alone for 1 year. And the second, if he died, the devil could not collect Jack's soul. And the devil agreed. And the next year came around and somehow Stingy Jack tricked the devil again. Part 2's already up.
If you ever find yourself in this situation, don't do what she did. It all began in 2005 when a group of cave divers wanted to film a documentary in the most dangerous cave in the world. A few hours into their descent, a huge storm erupted, causing the main entrance to the cave to collapse. In order to avoid the huge falling rocks coming from the ceiling, they were forced to swim through an unexplored part of the cave. After diving for over an hour, they came across an island and decided to set up camp until the rescuers could get to them. After 2 days of being trapped in the cave, the cameraman decided to start filming in case they don't make it out of there. At the same time, one of their crew members does something very stupid.
Tunnels, take your pick! Oh, fuck it! Hello! Please! Is there anybody there? Hello!
Parking lot safety tip. Have you ever been alone in a parking lot and noticed a van next to your car? Maybe it's a creepy one like this. Well, instead of getting into the car through the driver's side, parkour your way through the passenger side. It's safer that way.
Okay, so this is the craziest shit I've seen so far. I was taking the trash out with my son, and he kept pointing at the mirror and waving, and I didn't know why. So I pulled the camera out, and I can't believe I caught this.
That's Rowan.
Hi, my house is kind of weird. Come with me to look at it. So the weird part is the whole second floor is missing, so my bedroom looks normal, but then you look up and there's a room you can't get to and a loft you can't get to without a ladder. So put the ladder up and head on up there. You can see I have to move stuff out of the way from the door because it actually opens at night, which is kind of creepy, even though there's a lock. I think it has to do with the heat, but you open it. And it was, I think, like an old kid's bedroom because of the wallpaper, but it's all falling off. I don't know what I'm going to do with this room quite yet. It's the only carpeted part of my house, which is strange. And there's these creepy doors that are on the side that I refuse to open when I'm home alone. But yeah, this is it.
So my brother-in-law got this new house and there was a door on the floor, and when we got it open, there was like a really creepy staircase, super narrow and dark, and it smelled musty, but I was like, I'm gonna go see what's down there. So I went down the staircase. It was kind of hard because the stairs were like made out of dirt, but I went anyway, and the door was like stuck. Couldn't get in because it was like chained shut. And so I had to go figure out how to get the chain to release. I had to like pull the door closed with the chain, and then I could unhook it. And so you won't believe what I found down here, but you're gonna have to come back for that.
I asked Google what the most haunted places in my state are, and I came across this bridge in the small town of Avon, Indiana. So I texted my friend and we went to go see what it was all about. Stories say that a woman and her baby were crossing the bridge and tragically fell to their death several hundred feet below, and now haunt those who go under. So I'm gonna go under. According to the legend, if a train is going over the bridge, you can hear the cries of people who fell off it. There's a train going over it right now. Nothing weird has happened, but I just feel uncomfortable. I decided to go further under the bridge, and then this happened. Yo, did you hear that? I legitimately heard something, but we later found out what it was. There was a homeless guy up there. That's what I heard. That terrified me. It doesn't explain why my reader peaked, though. 500,000 likes, and we'll bring a Ouija board here.
So you may not know this, but I'm a real estate agent up in Northern California. Yesterday, this sweet old lady called me asking me if I could help her list her house. She told me it was fully furnished and wanted to sell it as is. Of course, I jumped at the opportunity. One of the most exciting things about my job is going and checking out time capsule properties like this. The tricky thing about this house is that it's not on a permanent foundation, so it's going to be hard for any buyer to get financing on it, so it has to be a cash deal. After getting inside, I could tell that nobody had been in here for a really long time. Everything, it was perfectly in its place. I love this old wallpaper, and I was really fixated on this toaster oven. I already have a lot of footage recorded of me at the house, but there were some areas where I got some really scary vibes, like the upstairs. I refused to go upstairs. I'll show you that in a part 2. Okay, I just got done at the house. I was there by myself. I decided to finally go upstairs, and oh my gosh, I literally ran out of there as fast as I could. I'm literally pulling away right now. So the upstairs had 3 rooms. It had 2 rooms that were really cold and one that was really hot. One of the rooms that was cold was huge. It had 2 full beds and a twin bed, I think. You'll see in the video, so don't quote me. And also, yesterday when I was there was this little hallway room with green carpet that was literally filled, completely filled with spider webs, and I kept brushing them away, and more would just come onto my face. And just now, there was no spider webs whatsoever, and I have the only key.
This is the library room in the Conjuring house. It actually used to be Roger Perrin's bedroom, the father in the Perrin family, and he supposedly suffered multiple demonic attacks and even saw the ghost of the witch Bathsheba in this room. The current owners of the home have also seen this book fly off the shelf.
Now don't be fooled by this photo, because this story is called The Demon Dog. For the short term they knew him, they called him Shanks. So if you haven't guessed it yet, Shanks is an American pit bull. But ever since Mark found Shanks, there was just something off. See, Shanks was fit, tough, and a very strong looking dog. But when you looked into his eyes, there was something evil that wanted to get out. But Shanks was a stray. He was found covered in blood months ago. The vet said that it was blood from a carcass or something that he had eaten to try and survive. But after we saw Shanks attack Robin Warmont while she was hanging out her washing, we knew it wasn't for survival. You see, Robin was 8 months pregnant when Shanks hunted her down and attacked her. Police said that they couldn't even recognise her once he'd finished ripping her apart. And unfortunately, neither her or her unborn baby survived. Since he ran away that day, 3 of his past owners have stepped forward, all with gruesome stories about Shanks. And all have refused to describe to police what he looks like, because he still stalks.
This is the story about the blind woman who could see ghosts. So this girl who was blind at birth lived with her father on a single ranch house. So because she was blind at birth, she had spatial awareness. Pretty much she knew how far apart everything was based on what she touched. One day in the living room, the blind woman was talking to a ghost named Ellie. So Ellie said to the blind woman her name and asked her why her face was so messed up. So the blind woman then asked, "Why is my face messed up? What's wrong with it?" And at that point, the father then heard the conversation and snagged the blind woman out of the room and said, "Who were you talking to?" The blind woman then replied, "I was speaking to Ellie," and then the father laughed. Over the course of the next few months, the blind woman started speaking to over 13 ghosts. And each time she would speak, her father would get very upset at her for speaking to ghosts. So one day, the blind woman fell in the kitchen and had to call the paramedics. And once the paramedics arrived there, she asked, "Can my dad come with me to the hospital?" The paramedic then replied, "Your dad's been dead for 6 years." Make sure to like for a part 2.
People that have been to heaven and hell, part 1. Jordan Samuel believes that he's been to heaven and hell. When Jordan was 15, he was raised by a single mom because his parents had split up. Being a curious kid, he would always ask questions about God. Like, how does he exist? How could one man die for me? And every time he would get kicked out of class for questioning it. The 3rd time he got kicked out, he said, "I'm done. I'm never believing in God again." When his parents split up, Jordan for 4 years was doing bad behaviors. He would steal cars, street race, and drink and drive. After a while, he wanted to change his life, so he started working at an oil rig company. One day after work, Jordan decided to smoke, but he didn't know that what he was smoking was laced with other drugs. His heart started fluttering and he went out. He said he started hearing screaming and people telling him to go back, run. He said it sounded like people were being tortured. All of a sudden, a bright hand reached out and grabbed him. He said that God started to judge him and he felt horrible. The Lord hugged him and said, "I forgive you," and he woke up. His girlfriend says he's in a better mood, he smiles more, and his personality has changed. Do you think he was visited by God, or was it one big hallucination? Like this video if you want a part 2 of people who've been to heaven and hell.
This film is said to be one of the scariest films ever made. So scary, in fact, it can actually kill people. Netflix released a new film called Veronica, and it is said to be one of the scariest films to ever be made. This film is reportedly so terrifying that people are turning it off before it even finishes. Netflix themselves have even said that 1 out of 100 people watching this could actually watch the full film. Even experts have suggested that the film can actually kill people who have weak hearts. So watch this at your own risk.
This is a school excursion you do not want to go on. She was that one kid that cut her arm, most of the time dressed emo, and just seemed to hate life itself. But during their school excursion to Pearl Harbor, she was the only one left to blame. You see, every class had to stay together, which was easy because they all had different wristbands. 5B's was red, which given what happened to them was pretty fitting. As the class entered the dark hallway leading to the underwater exhibition, they were guided and instructed by their audio headpieces, which on the day everyone in the class was wearing, except Kelly May. Now it's still not clear which door they exited or why, but the next day the whole class of 5B were found drowned and laying at the bottom of the shipwreck. All 28 of them without a noise, a splash or a cry for help. The only survivor of 5B was Kelly May, which still to this day she's not told police why 5B entered that door or why she thinks they went missing without a sound. And today she resides in one of Hawaii's mental asylums.
This is the dark mirror, and it's one of the most haunted items in the world. The original owner of this mirror purchased it at a psychic fair, but immediately claimed that there was something very evil about it. So she donated it to a traveling museum for the paranormal. This museum has a whole bunch of different paranormal objects, but the dark mirror is by far the most horrifying. The museum actually has to keep the mirror covered and tell people that if they're going to look into it, they have to do so at their own risk. Because the people who are brave enough almost always regret it. The people who have looked into the mirror claim to feel an immediate sense of doom and depression. But for others, it was far more horrifying. Some claim to see their own facial expressions warp and twist, and others would look into it and see their own dead body. The people who hold the mirror claim to feel a strange sense of electricity. And every night, the museum workers cover up the mirror. Every morning, they find it mysteriously uncovered.
My name is Arnie. A couple of years ago in the summer, we moved into a new house that was much bigger than our old house. The inside of the house was very huge. Everybody was satisfied with the house. But for some reason, I couldn't get rid of the unnerving feeling. One night, I stayed up late, alone watching some scary movies on my phone. All of a sudden, I heard what sounded like someone singing. At first, I thought maybe I was just paranoid, or it was coming from the movie I was watching. However, it kept going for like 15 minutes, even though I turned down the volume. I looked at my watch and it was almost 3 a.m. It sounded like a woman, and her voice would get very close to my room. Then it would slowly move through our halls. And then, after a few minutes, it vanished. I was creeped out. But I eventually went back to bed because nothing I could do about it. When I woke up in the morning, I asked my mother and sister if they had heard someone singing last night. They just shook their heads, and they even asked me if I was okay. I was puzzled by this. So the next night, I decided to stay up to see if the woman would sing again. Later that night, I was almost falling asleep, but then I heard it again. The time was exactly 3 a.m. I was so scared, too scared to go see who or what it was. I was pretty sure that I was the only one who was awake in the house. So I went out into the hallway quietly, and when I turned my head toward the hallway, I froze in fear. There was a woman who I've never seen before standing at the end of the long hallway and staring at me with a blank look. She was wearing a white dress, had long, straight black hair, and was singing that same bone-chilling song that I heard when I was in my room. I wanted to run back to my bed, but I couldn't move my legs for some reason. Then, the woman started slowly moving toward me. And what I noticed at that moment still gives me a chill to this day. She wasn't walking, but I could say that she was rather hovering a couple inches off the ground. As she was coming closer and closer, I could see that her mouth was almost ripping, and that was the most horrible thing I've ever seen in my life. I eventually passed out, and when I woke up in a panic, it was 3:30 a.m. I looked around the dark hallway, but she wasn't there anymore. Well, we still live in that house, and I've heard that dreaded singing from that woman moving throughout my house about twice a month. I told my friends about it, but no one ever believed me. I just hope that no one else has to experience this terrifying thing.